Have you ever experienced that strange feeling where, just as an opportunity seems to open up for you, something inexplicable causes it to fall apart? Maybe you've felt stuck in a pattern that you just can't explain, but what you're about to hear could be the key to breaking that invisible barrier. My name is Robert Hayes, and I'm 60 years old, born and raised in the United States. For over 25 years, I was involved in dark practices that led me to witness the most hidden aspects of the spiritual world. During those years, I saw firsthand how certain unseen forces, what many call monitoring spirits, are sent to observe, infiltrate, and financially ruin those who are on the verge of success. What's even more alarming is that these spirits don't steal through physical means, but rather with invisible tactics. They wait, observe, and then strike when the moment is right. If you've ever felt like things always seem to go wrong just when you're about to make a breakthrough, you should not ignore it. What you're about to discover might be the key to stopping this destructive cycle. It's unsettling to think that not everything happening around us is by chance. There are forces, silent, unseen, that operate in the shadows, influencing outcomes in ways we can't always perceive. These forces don't wield physical power. They don't need weapons to take action. Instead, they use more subtle methods, strategies that work behind the scenes, manipulating situations and controlling outcomes. They don't need to force their way in, they simply watch, wait, and when the time is right, they strike. Before we continue, I'd love to hear your perspective. Have you ever noticed how the decisions we make can lead to unexpected challenges in our journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss out on more empowering content like this every day. If you've ever wondered why everything starts falling apart just when you're about to take a step forward, why doors seem to open only to close again, or why opportunities slip through your fingers at the last moment, you might be dealing with something far more spiritual than you realize. I know this from my own experience. When I was deep in the world of the occult, I saw how these forces operate. They don't just attack randomly. No, they observe and wait for the perfect moment, when you're vulnerable, when you're on the brink of success. This isn't just coincidence, it's a strategy, carefully orchestrated to keep you stuck in a cycle of frustration and failure. Many people believe that their struggles are just part of life, that bad luck is what's standing in their way. But what if I told you that these struggles are often the result of spiritual forces watching you? These spiritual eyes don't just look from afar. They have a way of entering your life, becoming familiar with your plans, dreams, and weaknesses. They gather information, and once they know where you're vulnerable, they attack. You might think that I'm exaggerating, but I assure you, the spiritual world is far more aware of your movements than you realize. And this isn't just a theoretical concept. This is something I witnessed myself during my time in the occult. The Bible talks about the enemy lurking like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. But the truth is, he's not working alone. There are agents sent to observe your every move, and the more you grow, the more they watch. These monitoring spirits track your progress and report back on your steps toward prosperity. And they're clever. They don't need to act immediately. They wait for the right time, the moment when you're about to take a major step, and that's when they strike. I recall a man I knew, someone on the verge of signing a deal that would have transformed his life. He'd worked tirelessly, poured everything into his dream, but there was a flaw. He talked too much. He shared his plans with everyone, including people he trusted, people who had no idea that they were already being used as spiritual access points. The moment the wrong people knew his plans, the attack began. It wasn't obvious at first. No, these attacks are often subtle. A car breaks down here, a promise is broken there. Small things begin to go wrong, and suddenly everything seems to unravel. You pray, you hope, but it feels like there's an invisible wall holding you back. One of the most devastating tactics that these spiritual forces use is through people you trust. Family, friends, colleagues. They disguise themselves as allies, but in reality, they are being used to gather information and sabotage your success. I've seen it countless times. These spirits use individuals close to you as channels to gain access to your plans. And they don't always appear to be doing harm. In fact, they often seem like they're helping, offering support and encouragement, but underneath, they're feeding into a much darker agenda. When I was involved in these dark practices, the first thing we did was observe the people around our target. Who did they trust? Who were they closest to? And it's these very people, those who hold emotional access to you, that are often used as the point of entry for these spirits. It's not always malicious intent on the part of these individuals. Sometimes they don't even realize they're being used. They may be spiritually weak, emotionally wounded, or filled with jealousy. And these are the qualities that make them vulnerable to manipulation. I remember a case that still haunts me. It involved a woman named Patricia. She was a successful businesswoman, someone who had worked hard to build her empire. But the closer she got to success, the more her family seemed to ask for help. One day, she shared with a cousin that she had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. Her cousin, however, was filled with envy, though she didn't show it outwardly. The moment the information left Patricia's mouth, it triggered a chain of events that would unravel her entire life. Within months, the contract was cancelled, the client sued, and Patricia lost everything. The betrayal came from someone she trusted, and the damage was done before she even realized it. At this point, you may be wondering why these spirits focus so heavily on your financial life. The answer is simple. Money is power. Financial stability is freedom. And in the spiritual realm, controlling someone's money is a way to control their entire future. When your finances are blocked, it's not just about struggling to pay bills, it's about limiting your ability to grow, to dream, and to take action. The enemy knows this, and so the primary target becomes your financial well-being. These monitoring spirits don't attack haphazardly. They work with precision, timing their moves to cause maximum damage. They wait for the moment when you're about to experience a breakthrough, a moment of financial growth, and then they strike. When everything starts falling apart, when promises are broken, when contracts are cancelled out of nowhere, you may feel as though the universe is conspiring against you. But in reality, these spiritual forces are the ones behind it all, working to ensure that you never fully reach your potential. I've seen this happen time and time again. Individuals who are on the verge of something big, whether it's a promotion, a new business opportunity, or a deal that would change their life, only to have everything go wrong. One common sign of this kind of attack is when delays in financial matters seem to pile up one after another. The contract is set, the client confirms, the bank gives the green light, and then everything stalls. It's as if some invisible force is blocking the way. Sometimes the spiritual warfare isn't just about invisible forces acting from the shadows. It can also be about the people you interact with on a daily basis. You may be surrounded by people who, on the surface, seem to have your best interests at heart. Family members, friends, colleagues, people who appear to be offering help, advice, or just emotional support. But what if I told you that some of them could unknowingly be open channels for these spiritual forces? When I was involved in the occult, one of the first steps we took was to carefully observe those around our targets. We didn't just focus on the person directly. No, we studied their inner circle. Who were they close to? Who did they trust? We looked for the weak links, those who were emotionally wounded, spiritually vulnerable, or filled with envy. These individuals became the perfect vessels for spiritual attacks. And often, they didn't even know they were playing a role in the destruction of someone's life. I saw this firsthand in the case of one woman, Lisa. She was a successful entrepreneur, someone who had fought to build her business from the ground up, but she had a brother who was always in need of financial help. One day, she shared with him that she had just signed a lucrative deal. It wasn't a boastful conversation, it was just a family update, but that small piece of information was all it took. Her brother, filled with resentment and envy, unknowingly became the vessel for an attack. In the span of just a few months, Lisa lost her business. The deal fell through, her clients cancelled, and her once thriving business was gone. The attack came through someone she loved and trusted, and the damage was devastating. When you're trapped in this kind of spiritual battle, it's easy to feel like there's no way out. You pray, you work hard, and yet things just don't seem to move forward. It's like a constant cycle of effort, followed by disappointment. But there is hope. The good news is that the power to break this cycle exists, and it starts with spiritual awareness and discernment. The first step to breaking free from these spiritual blockages is recognizing that they exist. Most people go through life unaware that their financial struggles, emotional setbacks, and repeated failures could be the result of unseen spiritual forces. These spirits operate under the radar, using subtle methods to create confusion, delay, and destruction. But once you acknowledge their presence, you take the first step in reclaiming control. When I began to open my eyes to the truth, I realized that these spiritual attacks don't have to define your life. It was through discernment and a closer connection to God that I was able to start seeing the enemy's tactics for what they were: deceptive and designed to keep me in a state of confusion and defeat. And that's where the power of prayer comes in. Prayer is not just about asking for things. It's about connecting with the divine and gaining the spiritual insight needed to overcome these challenges. Now that you've started recognizing these spiritual attacks, the next step is to develop discernment. Discernment is the ability to see beyond the surface, to understand that not every setback or challenge is just a coincidence. It's about understanding that many obstacles in life are orchestrated by unseen forces that want to keep you from reaching your full potential. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I was deeply involved in the occult, I thought I could control everything. But the truth is, I was blind to the spiritual forces at play in my own life. It wasn't until I encountered God that my eyes were truly opened. I began to see the invisible battles happening around me, the ways in which these spirits used people, situations, and even my own actions to sabotage my success. And once I started praying with discernment, I could see the path forward more clearly. Discernment allowed me to see the attacks for what they were: strategies designed to block my progress, weaken my faith, and steal my peace. With this newfound clarity, I began to make better decisions, cutting ties with those who were being used as channels for negative influences, and no longer allowing myself to be distracted by the enemy's schemes. As you gain more discernment and understanding, one of the most important lessons I learned was the power of silence. There is wisdom in knowing when to speak and when to keep your plans to yourself. This is especially crucial when it comes to your dreams and goals. When you're close to making progress, the last thing you want is to reveal your intentions too early, before they are solidified. In the world of spiritual warfare, your words carry power. What you say can either invite blessings or give the enemy a foothold. I've seen many people unknowingly expose themselves to attack by sharing too much too soon. Whether it's telling someone about a business deal that hasn't been finalized or revealing a personal dream that's still in the planning stages, these premature words can create openings for these monitoring spirits to act. The Bible talks about the importance of keeping secrets, especially when it comes to prayer. In Matthew 6:6, Jesus instructs us to go into our room, close the door, and pray in secret. The same principle applies to our personal plans and aspirations. Not every idea needs to be shared with the world, and not every success should be announced before it's fully realized. Sometimes keeping things to yourself, preserving the sanctity of your plans, is the best way to protect them from the enemy's interference. Another tactic that these spiritual forces use is through seemingly innocent acts of kindness. You may think that someone is helping you, offering you a gift, a loan, or assistance in a time of need. But what if that seemingly generous act is actually a spiritual trap? This is a subtle and dangerous way these forces operate. through generosity that comes with hidden spiritual consequences. I've witnessed this firsthand during my time in the occult. One of the most effective strategies we used was offering help or gifts to our targets. It could be anything, a small loan, a gift of money, or even a favor that seemed harmless. But these gestures were never as innocent as they appeared. They were spiritually charged, often consecrated or bound to negative forces. And once the victim accepted them, they unwittingly opened the door to spiritual attacks. I remember a case where a businessman was struggling financially, and a friend offered to help him by lending him a large sum of money. It seemed like a godsend, a lifeline. But little did the businessman know that this money had been spiritually tainted. Soon after accepting the loan, his life took a turn for the worse. His business suffered, his reputation was tarnished, and the very help he had received turned into a chain that held him back from any real progress. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a spiritual strategy designed to prevent him from moving forward. As you begin to understand these spiritual dynamics, you'll start to recognize how often they influence your day-to-day life. It's not just about big, dramatic events or obvious failures. It's in the small, subtle moments that these forces make their presence known. You may notice an unsettling pattern where things start to go wrong just before you reach a breakthrough. It's in the constant delays, the unexpected issues that pop up, the opportunities that slip away at the last second. One of the most common signs of spiritual interference is when you find yourself making mistakes that seem out of character. You might forget important meetings, lose focus on crucial tasks, or find yourself making poor decisions that negatively impact your financial progress. These are often the result of a spiritual attack that's designed to cause confusion and delay. I've seen it happen over and over again. People who are close to achieving their goals, only to be tripped up by distractions and mistakes. And the worst part is, they don't always realize that it's not their fault. They think it's just bad luck, but in reality, it's the work of these invisible forces trying to derail their progress. It's like trying to run a race, only to find yourself constantly tripping over invisible obstacles. Have you ever noticed how, just when you're about to reach a breakthrough, everything seems to go wrong? This is one of the most powerful tactics used by these spiritual forces. They strike at the very moment you're closest to success. It's almost as if they know the exact point where your faith is about to be renewed, where you're about to break free from the cycle of struggle. This is not by chance. I've seen it countless times, both during my time in the occult and after my spiritual awakening. These forces don't act randomly. They wait until you're on the verge of something great. Then they push you to the edge with a final wave of obstacles and setbacks. And the impact is devastating. The emotional toll of almost achieving something and then losing it can shake even the strongest faith. It's designed to make you doubt everything, to make you question whether it's even worth trying anymore. I remember a man, John, who had spent months negotiating a contract with a major international company. Everything was set, his flight was booked, the meetings were scheduled, and the deal was almost finalized. But in the final 48 hours just before the signing, something unexpected happened. A small accident sent him to the hospital, which caused a delay in his flight, making him miss the crucial meeting. The company reconsidered the deal and chose another candidate instead. It felt like everything had fallen apart for no reason. But in reality, it was a spiritual attack designed to keep him from his breakthrough. As you continue on your journey of understanding spiritual warfare, it's important to recognize that these forces don't just operate in the visible world. They are active in unseen territories, places that many people don't even think to consider. The spiritual realm is divided into domains, each with its own specific focus and purpose. And when it comes to your finances, certain areas are targeted more than others, particularly those that involve the exchange of wealth, trade, and commerce. I learned this truth during my time in the occult. There are specific spiritual entities that are responsible for blocking financial transactions, causing delays in business dealings, and disrupting the flow of money in the physical world. Marine spirits, for example, are particularly dangerous when it comes to international trade and shipping. I've seen entire shipments of goods go missing or be delayed for no apparent reason, all because of rituals that targeted those transactions. Similarly, spirits associated with earth and land interfere with local businesses, government contracts, and even personal finances. These forces have authority over specific territories, ports, financial institutions, government buildings, and they use these places to manipulate the flow of money. And it's not just about physical goods or services, it's about the exchange of value, the wealth that people need to thrive. I remember an incident with a businessman who had made a large investment in goods from overseas. His shipment was delayed for weeks at the port, even though there was no logical explanation. The goods weren't damaged, and there was nothing wrong with the paperwork, but his shipment was held up for no reason. The cause? A spiritual attack directed at the flow of his business and his wealth. Once you begin to understand the forces at play, the next step is to arm yourself spiritually. This battle is not just against visible challenges, it's a spiritual war, and you need the right tools to fight it. One of the most powerful tools you have is prayer. Prayer with authority. Prayer that calls upon the protection of God to shield you from these attacks. During my time in the occult, we would often use rituals to summon powers that would influence the material world. But when I encountered the truth, I realized that the power of prayer was far stronger than any dark ritual. Prayer, when done with faith and discernment, can break spiritual barriers, destroy negative influences, and restore what the enemy has stolen. I've seen it in my own life. When I started praying with authority, declaring protection over my finances and my future, the attacks stopped having the same power. I was no longer an easy target, and this is the key. Prayer is not just about asking for help. It's about standing firm in your faith, declaring that no spiritual force has the right to steal your prosperity, your peace, or your future. Prayer is a shield, a weapon, and a source of strength. But it's not just about reciting words. It's about knowing who you're praying to and trusting in the power of God to protect you from these unseen forces. And the beauty of this is that once you start praying with understanding, these attacks lose their grip on you. You become spiritually fortified, and what was once a cycle of defeat becomes a path to victory. As you begin to pray and seek spiritual protection, another crucial element in breaking free from this cycle of spiritual warfare is discernment. Discernment is the ability to see beyond what is visible and understand the deeper spiritual truths behind your circumstances. It's about recognizing when something is off, when an opportunity isn't what it seems, or when someone around you may be unknowingly participating in a spiritual attack against your finances. The spiritual battle over your finances is not just about external forces. It's also about understanding where the breach is in your own life. There may be areas where you're unknowingly opening doors to these attacks, whether through relationships, habits, or even your own words. This is where discernment becomes vital. By asking God to reveal the hidden things, you begin to see the patterns, the people, and the situations that have been influencing your financial setbacks. When I started developing discernment, I could see things more clearly. I realized that some of the financial struggles I faced weren't just due to poor decisions or bad luck. They were the result of spiritual forces working against me. And once I began to recognize these influences, I was able to make better choices, cut ties with negative relationships, and protect myself from further attacks. Discernment empowered me to take control of my financial destiny in a way I never thought possible. As you continue on your journey toward financial and spiritual restoration, one of the most important steps is breaking any spiritual agreements that may have been made unknowingly. These agreements, often made through words, actions, or even through things that seemed harmless at the time, give the enemy legal access to your life. It's not always about doing something intentionally evil. It's about the spiritual doorways you've opened without realizing it. In my experience, I learned that these agreements are incredibly powerful. They can come in many forms. Perhaps you've made promises, spoken words of doubt over your own life, or even accepted help from someone who later became a vessel for negative forces. These actions, though seemingly innocent, can create spiritual bonds that keep you bound in a cycle of defeat. One of the most powerful moments in my own life was when I realized I had unknowingly made agreements that had kept me tied to the very forces I was trying to escape. It wasn't until I came to terms with these spiritual ties and began to renounce them that I started experiencing true freedom. Breaking these agreements is an essential part of the restoration process. You need to renounce any spiritual contract that has been made against your life and your prosperity, whether you're aware of it or not. When you begin to break free from these spiritual cycles, something incredible starts to happen. The weight that has been holding you back begins to lift, and a sense of freedom emerges. It's like you've been living in a fog, and suddenly the clouds begin to clear. The financial blocks, the delays, the feelings of being stuck, these things start to lose their power. But the process doesn't happen overnight. It requires patience, prayer, and a deep commitment to breaking away from the negative influences that have been affecting your life. It's not just about your finances. This is about reclaiming your emotional health, your spiritual peace, and your sense of purpose. I've seen so many people, including myself, go through this process. Once I recognized the spiritual forces at work, I was able to make changes that set me on the path to restoration. Cutting off unhealthy relationships, stopping the flow of negativity, and rebuilding my life from a place of strength were all part of the journey. The spiritual battle didn't end immediately, but with each step, I gained more control. When I broke free from the negative cycle, everything started to change. Financial opportunities that seemed impossible began to appear. Relationships that were once filled with tension became more peaceful. And my business, which had been struggling for years, began to thrive once again. The spiritual breakthrough led to a real-world breakthrough, and I've seen this happen for many others as well. True restoration is not just about financial gains or material success. It's about emotional, spiritual, and mental healing. The moment you break free from these spiritual attacks and start walking in the light of discernment and wisdom, your entire life begins to transform. What was once a source of frustration and struggle becomes a testimony of victory. When I started embracing true restoration, it wasn't just about the money or the business opportunities. It was about my heart and my mind being healed. No longer was I driven by fear or doubt. I began to understand that God had a plan for my life, one that wasn't dependent on the approval of others or the manipulation of unseen forces. It was a plan built on faith, trust, and divine timing. I began to see the things that I had once taken for granted in a new light. My relationships improved, my health began to recover, and I found a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. Financial restoration came, but it wasn't just about the dollars. It was about reclaiming my sense of purpose and finding fulfillment in the work I did, the people I helped, and the way I lived my life. True restoration is a holistic process. It's about finding healing in every area of your life, spiritually, emotionally, and financially. And the beautiful thing is that when you allow God to lead you in this process, restoration is not just a temporary fix. It's a lasting transformation that will continue to unfold as you grow in faith and understanding. The most powerful realization in all of this is that when you break free from the spiritual forces that have been holding you back, you are no longer bound. The chains that once kept you in a cycle of defeat, frustration, and financial struggle are shattered. You are free. But this freedom comes with a responsibility to stay vigilant, to continue walking in the light, and to keep building on the foundation of discernment and faith. that has brought you this far. I know from personal experience that this journey isn't easy. It's a battle that requires persistence, courage, and above all, faith. But the victory is worth it. The power of God's restoration is real, and once you experience it, you'll never look back. It's not just about overcoming spiritual attacks. It's about embracing the life that God has intended for you, a life of abundance, peace, and purpose. If you've made it this far, you're already on the path to breaking free from the invisible forces that have been blocking your way. The truth is, God's plan for you is bigger than any spiritual attack or obstacle you may face. When you stand firm in faith, recognize the power of discernment, and take action to break free, you open the door to true restoration in every area of your life. Remember, victory is not just a distant hope, it's available to you right now. The chains are already broken, and all that's left is for you to step into the freedom that God has prepared for you. Keep moving forward with faith and trust that He will guide you every step of the way. If this message has resonated with you and you're ready to step into the breakthrough God has for you, type "I'm claiming my victory" in the comments and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you can stay updated with the content God has prepared for you. May the Lord bless you, protect you, and guide every step of your journey. See you tomorrow, and until then.